Hello, my name is Kaila Kea Lewis. I am a career coach with the Muse and Fairygodboss. Welcome to Coach Connect Office Hours. I'm so excited to be here and so looking forward to answering your questions about job searching and career development, particularly if you are navigating a layoff. So I'm very excited. We have some questions that have come in advance, and we have some questions that are going to be coming through the chat. And I'm going to be answering as many as we can today and looking forward to getting those questions answered so that you can take the next steps in your careers. So let's dive in and get started. The first question that we have today reads, I've been working for the same company in various roles for over 18 years, but want to leave. How do I even start this process? The job market is so different now that I'm feeling overwhelmed. Any suggestions on how to figure this out would be greatly appreciated. This is such a great question because so many people feel this way, especially in this job market. The first thing that I would encourage you to do is to gain clarity on your process. And I encourage you to do that by asking yourself 3 questions and then really giving yourself some time to think about these questions. So the first question is, what do I like to do in my career? What are you interested in? What drives you? What lights you up? What is that for you? The second question is, what am I qualified to do in my career? So what do you have the background and the skill set to do next? And the third question is, what is available for me to do in my career? So, what are some opportunities that are in demand, and how does that intersect with the first 2 questions that you answered? So by kind of working your way through those questions, that should help you gain clarity and identify potential opportunities for what you like to do next, right? And those opportunities should align with your responses to those 3 questions. And that's going to look a little bit different for everyone. But that's a great question because you're right. The job market has changed considerably in recent years, and it continues to evolve. But I heard you say that you have worked in multiple roles with that same company over the last 18 years. So it sounds like you had to adapt to the different demands and requirements of each of those roles. And that's a great skill to have, especially in this job market. So consider highlighting that as you take your next steps. And once you start moving into resume development and networking, keep in mind that strength you have of adapting to all those different roles at that company, because that adaptability is going to be really helpful in taking your next step, but also marketing your background and your skills to potential employers. All right. So let's see what other question we have. So another question that I see we have here reads, I look for roles 1 or 2 levels above my current job title, but have been told I'm not considered because I don't have those same titles in my resume and LinkedIn. Is it frowned on to fake a title in your LinkedIn headline to increase your searchability? So this is another great question. A lot of people are just really looking forward to getting back to work as soon as possible. So they're trying to explore every avenue to, kind of rise to the top of those search results for potential employers. So this is a great question. I always tell my clients to lead with your truth. Whatever is true for you, that is really what you want to lead with, and that's what you want to use to guide your process. So I know it's tempting to put down something that helps, your resume or LinkedIn profile stand out, or something to get the employer's attention, or as you said, increase your searchability. However, I would actually encourage you to do some more networking, because the more you connect with people, potential employers, people that are in your desired field or industry, the more you make those connections, the more opportunities you create to provide background and context on your role. So that's where you get to say, this is what I've done in my previous position, which has set me up for a senior level version of this role, for a promotion for this role, right? I would also emphasize in your LinkedIn profile the ways that you've served as a leader in your current and previous roles. So even if you didn't have a designated leadership job title, what are some things that you initiated or led or improved that had a positive impact on your team or the company as a whole. And then make sure you're highlighting those in your LinkedIn profile. A lot of times, potential employers know that even if you haven't held a specific senior level job title, if you've been doing some of that work and you know what it means to lead and what that looks like, that also translates really well. So make sure you're highlighting those things. Whatever's true for you, whatever highlights your leadership abilities, highlight those things in your LinkedIn profile. And make sure you're being transparent in doing that, because you've already done some great work in your career, I'm sure, and that's more than enough. So good luck. That's a really good question. All right, so I want to go to the chat and just kind of see what are some questions that are coming up here, because I want to make sure that we are touching on several different points here that people have questions about. So let's see what we've got. All right. So someone asked, what job boards do you recommend other than LinkedIn or Indeed? This is a great question, and one that I actually get quite a bit. So I love that you all are thinking outside of the box. LinkedIn and Indeed, of course, are kind of like go-to options when it comes to job boards, but a few others that I like and that I encourage my clients to use. The Muse is a great option, of course. And one of the reasons I highlight the Muse is because you not only get to see and access the job board where it has current job openings, but you can also see, in most cases, a company's profile. So if a company has a job posted there, you can see their profile, what their company culture is like, get an inside look at their office spaces. So I think that's a nice comprehensive job board to consult. So make sure you're using the Muse. And then Glassdoor is another great option for job boards, because as you're looking at those job openings, you also get to see some reviews from current and former employees. So that's another great place to kind of be checking for some of those opportunities. And then a third option that I like to suggest is Built-in. And Built-in is a great one. There are a lot of tech-specific opportunities there, but they're not all tech-specific. So you get a nice variety. And they also have some really great career content that can be helpful for you as well. So once again, I would say the Muse, Glassdoor, and Built-in, great job boards to consider. Excellent questions here. All right, so for another question from the chat, how far back will you go on a resume? So I get this question a lot as well. People are always wondering, should I tell potential employers everything that I've done? Should I limit it? What are the rules and regulations there? So of course, there is some nuance depending on your industry, depending on the sector that you are job searching in. But as a good rule of thumb, you want to stick to the last 7 to 10 years of your career. Most potential employers are going to be most concerned with what you've been doing during that time frame, that 7 to 10 year period. So that is what you want to stick as closely as possible to. Now, there are some exceptions there, right? In some cases, you might say, I have this really great role that's relevant to what I want to do next. That goes back maybe 11 or 12 years. In that case, you can still include that on your resume. You may want to include it in an abbreviated format. So maybe you're not giving 5 to 7 bullets. Maybe your strongest 2 to 3 bullet points for that, since it is an earlier role. However, if you have a situation like that, you can go back further. But generally, you want to stick to the past 7 to 10 years. All right. So let's see another question that we had come in ahead of time. I see someone asked, how can I explain gaps in my career? Does ADHD or anxiety need to be reported? This is, once again, excellent question, because this is something a lot of people are probably wondering about. So for your first part of your question, how can I explain gaps in my career? It's important to have a resume that is as clear and concise as possible. So I have seen where people have put career break into a section where there's a gap. I've also seen where people have listed independent projects, travel experience, consulting experience in those gaps to kind of show what they were doing with that time. Those are great ways to go about it. There's no one size fits all here, but those are a good way to kind of show what you were doing, even if it wasn't formal work or career experience. So you can consider that, particularly if you volunteered, did some consulting or something along those lines. If you did that kind of work, that's a great way to kind of fill in that gap and show potential employers what you were doing during that time. However, if you say, you know what, I really wasn't doing anything relevant to like my career or anything like that during that time, then it's okay to kind of just lay it out in reverse chronological order, and then make sure you're applying with a cover letter. And in that cover letter, give a little bit more context to what you were doing, right? If you say, I took some time off to travel, I took some time off to explore my interests and make sure that I could be an even stronger and more present employee when I return to the workforce, that's a great way to give some context there, and kind of let employers know what you were doing and how you kept your skills sharp during that time. So that's an option for you as well. Now, to the second part of your question, does ADHD or anxiety need to be reported? Generally, that is not something that you have to disclose if you do not want to. So that is a personal part of your life. And if you don't want to share that with your employer, you don't have to in most cases. However, if it is something that you need an accommodation for and something that you would want to get that accommodation on file with your company's HR department, then you would need to disclose it at that point. And those accommodation guidelines and policies tend to vary from company to company, but you would want to look into your specific company's guidelines around what you need to do in order to get an accommodation. So if you need that, then you would want to disclose that to the employer. However, if you don't need an accommodation for your role, then it's totally up to you if you want to share that with your employer. All right. So let's see some more questions in the chat here. You all are asking great questions, and I just think we're doing great here in covering a lot of our bases and a lot of things that so many job seekers are wondering about. So let's see what else we have here. ATS seem to reject resumes prior to getting to a recruiter. Is there a method to get around the ATS? So the ATS, or the applicant tracking system, it is almost like a robot, right? It's just going to scan for exactly what it's been told to scan for. And in terms of appealing to that applicant tracking system, or ATS, there are a few things I encourage you to do. For one, I encourage you to make sure that your resume is keyword optimized. So this is true if you are applying for a position in the same industry that you've been in, or if you're applying for something in a new industry and you're changing careers. You want to make sure that your resume includes relevant keywords that you would see in the types of job postings that you're applying for. But then also, you want to make sure that your resume is functional. So I've seen lots of resumes where they're using charts and tables and text boxes to make the design more appealing. And usually the resume is very pretty, but it doesn't always get past the ATS, because a lot of times the ATS cannot read some of those special characters and text boxes and things like that. So you want to make sure that you are embedding the text and the content of your resume directly in that document. And that's going to give the ATS the best possible chance of reviewing your document and getting everything in there that the potential employer needs to see. But finally, please make sure that you're applying for positions that are in alignment with what it is you've already done or what it is that you want to do. Make sure your resume speaks to what you have in terms of skills, qualities, and competencies that relate to that position, because that is going to help the ATS recognize your resume as that of a candidate who should be moving forward and who should be passed along to the hiring manager. So just making sure that you're optimizing your document, you're not using a whole lot of formatting and text boxes and things like that, so that the ATS can read it, and then making sure you've got relevant buzzwords and keywords in that document. All right, so let's see what else we have here. If I'm making a career pivot and have the transferable skills, how should I make sure my future employer understands that they can be applied to their industry? Excellent question. The largest population of folks that I have the pleasure of supporting is career changers. So I love talking about what makes a successful pivot or transition. So if you are making a career pivot and you've got those transferable skills, you want to make sure that you are capturing those skills in the first half of your resume. So when you're formatting that document, you want to make sure that you are capturing that nice and early so that the ATS picks up on it first thing, but also so that when the hiring manager sees your document, they see those skills early on. It's great that you already have the transferable skills. Make sure that you're clearly outlining them in your document. And then from there, when you get into your experience section, always be keeping in mind those transferable skills. Think about some of the projects or tasks or functions you have fulfilled in your roles, and make sure you're tying them back to those skills, because that's what employers are going to be looking for. Anytime I've ever been on a search committee, we're always trying to connect the dots when we're looking at a candidate's resume, and we're thinking, well, how does this relate to that, right? How can this position us for success? So you also want to be keeping that in mind as you're developing your resume, and also your LinkedIn profile, because that's also a great place to be capturing those transferable skills and making sure employers can connect the dots. So those are some great ways to do that. All right, let's see what else we have. I have worked with startups in remote roles the last 5 years. 3 of 4 roles have ended due to layoffs. How can I explain the short-term roles between 8 months to 1 year on my resume? So this is a really good question. A lot of people are going to be wondering about this as they kind of feel their way through this job market and navigate layoffs and shorter term roles and things like that. So thank you for asking this question. So in your resume, there's not really much you need to do to explain it, right? More so, I would be focusing on making sure that those roles are represented as strongly as possible. Be clear, be specific, and include as many measurable, quantifiable results in those roles as you can. You want to show that even though I was only in this role for about 8 months or potentially a year, I made an impact before my time ended there. And then when you're going through and filling out the job application for that role, which you'll likely do in most cases, make sure that you're noting that when it asks, why did you leave your last role, or why did your last role end? Then you want to make sure that you are noting that your role ended due to layoffs, or if you know it was restructuring, budget cuts, something along those lines. You just want to add a note there that lets them know it was due to layoffs, and also that it was not merit or performance based. So when you say this role ended as a result of layoffs, due to budget cuts or due to restructuring, that sends a message to potential employers that, oh, this had nothing to do with your performance, right? That you so clearly outlined in a measurable way in your application and your resume. Instead, this is due to layoffs, which lots of people are up against, and they'll understand. But those are some strategies that I would use to note those clearly and concisely on your resume. Let's see, where are we? So this next question says, if I want to make a career change within my company, how do you suggest I strategize this move? Excellent thing to be thinking about. So one of the first things I would be thinking about is how your company approaches this. I would be looking at your employee handbook or consulting with HR just to see what the process is, because that does tend to change company to company. So if you're not completely sure what that entails, making a career change within your organization, definitely consult HR, look at your employee handbook, or set up a brief meeting with your direct supervisor just to kind of see what that would look like. You have some companies where you need, for example, supervisor approval to make a change within the company or apply for an internal role. And then you have other companies where that's not the case. So make sure you have a clear understanding of what your company requires when it comes to making a career change or any change within the company. And then from there, I would start thinking about, okay, what type of career change am I making in the company, right? Now I know what the rules and regulations are when it comes to this. Now I need to figure out how I'm going to market myself as the best possible candidate for this opportunity. So start looking at what you've already done in the company in terms of your specific team contributions, but also your contributions to the company as a whole. And then from there, you want to be thinking about, how am I tying that to the role that I want to pivot to next within this company? Start connecting those dots, just like we talked about a little bit earlier, and start making a case for yourself on your resume about why the previous roles that you held at the company connect to what you like to do next. You're also going to be highlighting transferable skills. One thing that you have working for you, in addition to what we just talked about, is that you already know how the company works. So that's going to work in your favor. But in addition, show those transferable skills, right? Show what you've already done and what you've already learned and developed that can benefit the company as you make your way into a new position. Good luck. That's exciting. All right. So we have another question here that says, I want to pivot and continue working in business analysis and related transferable skills. I'm also older and still love working. So that's wonderful. I say, as long as you feel energized enough to keep working and contributing to an organization and learning and building your skill set, I say go for it. So if you want to pivot, within business analysis, again, I would start thinking about what do I already have that would make sense in this space and what do I still need to gain? And then from there, assess any gaps or any learning opportunities that you may want to take advantage of. So if you have, let's say, for example, 3 out of 5 transferable skills that you're going to need to be successful in business analysis, those 2 remaining skills that you need, see if there's an online self-paced course or certification program you can take advantage of, or even consider inquiring with your current employer to see if they support any professional development opportunities that you can take advantage of to fill in the gaps that you still need to be successful in business analysis for as long as you'd like to. So I would say start by taking some of those steps. And then from there, start making sure that you're looking for the right opportunities to give you an opportunity to work in business analysis for as long as you'd like to continue your career. All right, let's see what else we've got here. Excellent questions coming through. Thank you to everyone who sent a question in advance and is in the chat right now, because these are awesome questions that I know a lot of people are wondering about. So let's see. I'm curious if stating that I was laid off due to a financial downturn on the resume, wouldn't it be ideal to get the interview and be prepared for the question as to why I left? Excellent question. So this does vary a little bit based on each individual's unique situation. We've seen so many different things happen with these layoffs, and sometimes it is something that you may want to mention in the resume. However, just based on what you shared with me, I don't think it's something you need to mention there. I actually would revert back to something we just talked about a little bit earlier in terms of making sure that your resume is solid. If you've got the skills and the results that employers are looking for, and the ones that are going to get employers excited about the work that you've done and what you can potentially do for them, that's going to be a good thing to get your foot in the door to that interview. And then you can talk about, what the terms were or what the situation was with your layoff. So I think you're on the right track with saying, let's get the interview first and then be prepared to answer that question. Absolutely agree with you there. Kind of practice a few different responses when it comes to answering that. And don't feel like you have to go into a ton of detail. Employers usually just want to kind of know, what was the nature of that? What happened? Well, my company experienced a financial downturn, and unfortunately, my position, along with several others, were impacted. But that's also helped me to get out into the job market and explore some new opportunities, such as this one. So I think you're on the right track, and I would absolutely be focusing more on getting the interview first and then being prepared to answer that question when you get to that point. All right, let's see what else we have here. Can you give an overview of the services you offer currently? Absolutely. So, as I mentioned before, the Muse is a great resource for career development, and not just in terms of what we offer on Coach Connect, our coaching platform, but we also have articles, blog posts, templates, different things you can use throughout your career development and throughout your job search. So, it's definitely a great one-stop shop for those things. But more specifically, going back to Coach Connect, our coaching platform, we offer a wide range of services. So everything from resume and cover letter reviews to job search strategies and interview preparation. So we do have a wide range of services there. And the great thing is that you can explore different options with different coaches. So you can take a look at Coach Connect and kind of get an idea of which coach may be the best fit for you. And then actually you can also look at our client reviews. So check out reviews and see what other job seekers have have been saying about their experience with the coaches. And that gives you an idea too of not just what services we offer, but how different coaches deliver those services, right? We always aim to provide a streamlined experience that is clear, that's consistent, and that is customized. So it always takes your unique needs into consideration. So once again, just taking a look at Coach Connect is a great way to get acquainted with our services. And again, we offer resume reviews, cover letter reviews, networking strategy services, and a number of other services that can be helpful. All right, so I want to take a look at a question that we had come in ahead of time. We are nearing the end of our session today, but I want to reach as many questions as we can because you all have brought up some really great points that I know a lot of other job seekers are wondering about. So let's see what else we have here that came in within the past few days. So this person says, I need to hide my anxiety level when starting a new job. I can be hard on myself. I also am not sure what I want to do with my nursing career. So I love this question, and thank you so much to the person who asked this, because again, this is something that affects a lot of people. So the first thing I want to say is you are not alone. Some people experience anxiety in every area of their lives, including job searching, career development, and other people experience it exclusively to job searching and career development. So some people are like, I'm great once I get in the job, but having to go through the process and starting that new journey, it really makes me feel anxious. So you're not alone in that. A lot of people that I've worked with and spoken to have that same feeling. And so there's no need to be hard on yourself. It actually is a lot more common than you may even realize. One thing I would say is that trying to hide the anxiety may actually be making you more anxious. So it might be, more constructive to say, what are some ways that I can kind of get my nerves out and kind of burn some energy, get some of that anxiety out to help me perform better and feel a little bit more confident and comfortable as I'm starting something new. Maybe that means, taking a brief walk in the morning before work or getting some exercise in, doing something that brings you joy, whatever that is. If you have a favorite book, or a comfort show that is helpful in calming you down. Thinking of some ways to work that in. I've also worked with folks who have said, you know what, I listen to a podcast, in the mornings before I go to work or before I clock in. And that helps me because I really enjoy that podcast. Thinking of some useful strategies that can help you not really hide the anxiety, but, reframe it in a sense. And then in addition to that, it's totally okay. If you're working with coworkers or you're feeling kind of nervous or anxious about something when you're at work, saying, thank you all for your patience today. I'm feeling a little bit anxious as I'm starting something new, but I'm also excited to learn. That's a great way to just be open and honest about it, to manage that expectation early, and then also not feel even more anxiety about having to hide it. So don't be hard on yourself. A lot of people experience it, and I'm sure you're going to be just fine. It really is common. So you are going to be fine, and I'm sure you're going to do well if you've already started a new job or if you're looking to do that soon. And then to the second part of your question, you say, I'm also not sure what I want to do with my nursing career. This could be a great opportunity to consider working with one of our career coaches on Coach Connect, because a lot of times those sessions, whether you're doing like a career Q&A or a job search strategy, those are good ways to start saying, what do I want to do? How do I get clarity on what I want to do? There are some great options, career options in healthcare and in nursing specifically, even if you're not going to be in the hospital, right? There are other opportunities as well. So this could be a great opportunity to work with a coach, get clarity. And then also, I want to revisit the 3 questions I mentioned earlier at the top of our session. What do I like to do? What am I qualified to do? And what is available for me to do? So start there and then let that guide your process. We are nearing the end of our time here, so we are going to wrap up. But thank you so much to everyone who sent a question, who's in the chat here, and everyone who tuned in, but also everyone who uses the Muse as a resource for your career development and your job search. We love being able to engage with you all, and we really appreciate that you all have tuned in and asked these excellent questions. Once again, these are questions that so many people are wondering about. So thank you for sending these in, and please stay tuned because we have so many other programs that are going to be coming and other opportunities for you all to ask questions. So please keep an eye out for some of those opportunities. But once again, thank you. It's been so great engaging with you all, and I wish you all much success in your job search and in your careers.